When my coworker stole my sales and got promoted, he laughed, "Smile more and learn the game, honey." I was forced to train him as my new boss while he took credit for my work and made me do his reports. I obeyed every order, even the one that broke a client NDA. Legal launched an inquiry and asked who signed off. He was laughing, right there in the middle of the break room, holding a coffee cup with his name etched on it. Regional Sales Lead. My title. Or at least, it should have been. He leaned back in his chair, smirking as he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Guess you should smile more and learn to play the game, honey. Works wonders for some of us." Everyone chuckled awkwardly, like it was just office banter. But I saw the way his eyes cut at me. He wanted me to break. He enjoyed watching me shrink. His name was Derek Miles, and he'd been my coworker at Fairview Tech for 3 years. We'd both been in sales, same accounts, same quotas. Only difference? I actually hit my numbers. Derek hit on the clients. The promotion he got. Those were my sales. My data, my proposals, my meetings. He just found a way to wrap it all in his charming smirk and present it to management before I could. And when he got promoted, guess who they made report to him? Yeah, me. At first, I told myself to stay calm, that people like him eventually trip on their own lies. But then came the humiliation. He made me reformat his client decks I had already made from scratch. He'd forward my own emails to me with "Please make these clearer." "Thanks, champ." He'd show up late to meetings and ask me to fill everyone in like I was his assistant. Then came the worst of it. He started taking credit for new sales too. Ones he wasn't even involved in. My client pitches were somehow joint efforts, after I found out he'd been quietly CCing himself on my follow-up emails, then scheduling private calls with my clients behind my back. It all boiled over last Thursday. He dumped a stack of contracts on my desk and said, "Legal wants these signed and sent to Greenwell Logistics by Friday. Use the template in the shared folder. Don't overthink it, just copy and paste like usual." But here's the thing, that folder wasn't supposed to be used for external sharing. It contained a confidential client data set protected under NDA. The file wasn't meant to leave internal circulation. I knew that. He knew that. I asked him twice, "Are you sure about this? This includes Greenwell's competitor data." He rolled his eyes, waved his hand, and said, "Relax, just follow my lead. I'll handle the fallout if there's any." So I did exactly what he said. By Monday morning, legal was calling an emergency meeting. The Greenwell contract had triggered a serious breach of confidentiality. There were screenshots, IP traces, audit logs. They wanted to know who approved the data transfer. And that's when I remembered Derek's smug grin and the way he said, "Follow my lead." So I did what he told me to do again. I told legal the truth. Derek Miles approved the action. The silence that followed was thick. Legal's director, a woman named Pamela, blinked twice and said quietly, "We'll need to confirm that." And that's when I realized Derek had just walked into the conference room. His face was pale, his tie crooked, and his hands shaking slightly as he held his coffee cup. He looked at me like he knew something had gone terribly wrong. Pamela turned to him. "Derek, did you authorize this?" He froze. And in that moment, watching him try to smile his way out of it, I felt something cold and deliberate settle in my chest. He wanted to play games. Fine, I'd play them too, but I was going to play by his rules. And by the time I was done, Derek Miles was going to wish he'd never spoken my name. When I first met Derek, I didn't think much of him. He was one of those guys who always had an easy laugh, always on, like he was performing even in casual conversation. Everyone liked him instantly, especially management. He had that fake charm people mistake for confidence. I joined Fairview Tech 3 years ago, sales associate. I'd worked my way up from cold calling local businesses to managing mid-tier enterprise accounts. Long hours, late nights, missed birthdays, it didn't matter. I was good at it. I understood clients. I didn't sell them dreams. I sold them what actually solved their problems. Then Derek got transferred to our team. He came from another branch, one that apparently didn't appreciate his talent. That should have been a red flag. I remember his first week. He didn't know half the systems, kept missing data entries, and asked me to walk him through the process. I didn't mind helping. I actually believed in teamwork back then. Within a month, he started shadowing my calls. "Just observing," he said. Then he'd take over halfway through the meeting, repeating my pitch word for word, adding a few jokes, and somehow ending the call with the client charmed and giggling. I told myself it didn't matter who said it, as long as the team got credit. But that was before I learned he was forwarding my drafts to management and labeling them joint proposals. It started small. He'd attach his name to the end of a deck I built. Then he began scheduling strategy syncs without me and presenting my client lists as his own targets. When I confronted him once, he laughed it off. "Relax, I'm just helping you get visibility. You're too quiet in meetings, you gotta let me do the talking." That was his pattern. He'd make himself the face, and I'd be the hands behind the curtain. The breaking point came 6 months later. Our branch had been competing for a regional leadership spot. Whoever secured the most client revenue in Q3 would be promoted. I was leading by a wide margin. Derek was barely scraping third. Then suddenly, 3 of my biggest accounts, Greenwell Logistics, Hydrobyte Systems, and Coropath Freight, were reassigned to shared ownership. Derek's name appeared next to mine on every CRM entry. I asked our director, Martin, what happened. He said, "Derek mentioned you two were collaborating on these pitches. He said you wanted shared credit." I didn't even know he had access to those files. When I told Martin that wasn't true, he gave me that patronizing look managers save for women they think are too emotional. "Hey, don't make this personal. Derek's just trying to help the team succeed." 2 weeks later, Derek closed Greenwell. Except the pitch deck he used, it was mine, same design, same talking points, even my signature slide transitions. I found the PowerPoint in the shared drive under a new name. Greenwell Final Derek Miles PPTX. That's when it hit me. He'd been copying my files for months. When he got the promotion, HR said it was well-deserved. Derek even had the audacity to send a company-wide email thanking everyone who supported his journey, especially my colleague, my name, for teaching me so much about sales strategy. Teaching him. Yeah, that's one way to describe it. After that, the office dynamic shifted. People stopped looking at me as the quiet expert and started seeing me as his shadow. He'd stroll by my desk and say, "Hey champ, how's my right hand doing?" in front of everyone. Then came the final insult. I was told I'd be reporting to him. I'd have to train him on the reporting systems, client tracking, everything. At first, I planned to quit. But then I thought about all those nights I stayed late while he was out, networking at bars with management. I thought about how he looked me in the eye the day he got promoted and said, "No hard feelings, right? Just business." I stayed, and I started paying attention to the things he deleted, to the shortcuts he used, to the emails he BCC'd himself on, and most importantly, to the one thing he always assumed I wouldn't do: follow orders. Because in Derek's world, following his lead was supposed to make me his pawn. But soon, he'd find out I was something else entirely. Once Derek became my supervisor, everything changed. The guy didn't just want to control the work, he wanted to control me. He started small, of course. Those subtle digs that sounded like jokes to anyone listening. "Hey, you forgot to CC me on that email, rookie mistake." Or, "If you're having trouble with clients, I can always step in and smooth things over." I wasn't having trouble. I was the one saving his client relationships from falling apart after his lazy follow-ups. But then, he started turning everyone else against me. He'd accidentally copy the whole department on messages that made me look incompetent. Things like, "Hey, just checking if you had time to fix those errors in your report. No worries, we all make mistakes," smiling face with smiling eyes. Except the errors were his numbers, entries he'd asked me to change because he didn't understand the system. He also started taking credit for everything that came out of my department. If I closed a deal, he'd frame it as team effort. If something went wrong, he'd say, "I let my name take the lead, trying to help her grow." I noticed that pattern quick. He was setting me up to take the fall. Then he crossed the line. We had a client dinner with Greenwell's executives at a restaurant downtown. Derek was half drunk before the appetizers even hit the table. He started bragging, loudly, about how he mentored me into the professional I was. "Wouldn't have made it this far without a little push, huh?" he said, putting a hand on my shoulder. It wasn't friendly. It was possessive. I smiled through it because the clients were there. But I could see one of the Greenwell guys, Mark, look uncomfortable. When I excused myself for a bathroom break, Mark followed and quietly said, "You okay? That guy's out of line." I told him I was fine. I wasn't. After that night, things got worse. Derek must have sensed I was starting to see through his fake charisma because he went full sabotage mode. He started forgetting to include me in key meetings with new clients. When I'd ask about them, he'd say, "Oh, you didn't get the invite. Must have been a system glitch." Then he'd CC me in the recap email afterward, copying half the team so it looked like I was slacking off. He also started micromanaging. Every email I sent had to go through him first. Every file had to be approved. But the real kicker was what he did to my performance review. HR sent me a copy by mistake, an internal draft meant for managerial review. It had Derek's comments on it. He wrote things like, "Shows potential but lacks initiative. Sometimes emotional in high-pressure situations. Needs to improve communication and interpersonal tone." I'd never raised my voice once. He was rewriting who I was on paper. That's when I knew this wasn't just about professional jealousy anymore. He wanted to erase me from the company. The next few weeks, I documented everything. Every insult, every email, every contradiction. I even started recording our Zoom calls quietly. HR wouldn't believe me unless I had proof. Then came that fateful morning. Derek burst into my cubicle with his signature urgent tone. "I need you to handle the Greenwell contracts today. Just copy the last batch and send them to the client. Use the same data set." I froze. The last batch contained confidential cross-client metrics, stuff covered under strict NDAs. I told him that, twice. He leaned against my desk, smiling that cocky grin. "You worry too much. Legal loves me. Just do it." So I did. Word for word, instruction for instruction. 3 days later, legal called the emergency meeting. Greenwell was furious. They said confidential figures from a competitor appeared in their deliverables. And now legal wanted to know who approved it. As I sat across from Derek in that conference room, watching his fake confidence crumble, I realized something. For the first time since he'd walked into my life, he was the one cornered. But this was just the beginning. I wasn't done yet, because I had something he didn't know about, something that could burn down everything he'd built on lies. After legal's meeting, the office felt different. Quiet, too quiet. People stopped looking Derek in the eye when he walked by. The whispers started almost immediately, words like breach, liability, termination. He tried to play it cool, of course, walked around with his usual swagger, pretending nothing was wrong. But I saw it, the nervous tapping of his pen, the constant glances at his phone, the way he started leaving the office early for meetings. For the first time, Derek wasn't in control. That should have been enough for me. But I wasn't after temporary humiliation. I wanted the truth. Why he'd targeted me so deliberately, why every move he made seemed designed to crush me. So I started digging. I had access to the project folders he used, the client logs, and the CRM entries we shared. I noticed something strange, duplicates of my pitch decks saved under different client names, all last modified by Derek. But when I opened them, they weren't just copies. They had confidential pricing models from other clients inserted into them. That's when I realized what he'd really been doing. He wasn't just taking credit for my work. He'd been using my legitimate research to leverage side deals. He was quietly feeding competitor data to Greenwell's contacts, info that only internal staff could access. And here's where it gets darker. When I checked metadata from his files, one of the external email addresses he'd been sending, drafts, to didn't belong to Greenwell or any approved partner domain. It belonged to Lindsay Dorr, Fairview's director of operations. Lindsay, the same Lindsay who had been mentoring Derek since his first month, the one who always seemed to show up in his office late at night, helping him with reports. The one who mysteriously sat in on every single promotion review. Suddenly everything snapped into place. He wasn't a genius at office politics. He had protection. Lindsay had been funneling him insider access to client strategies, account transfers, and internal audit notes. She'd been feeding him the tools to make himself look like a star while making me, and anyone else who threatened his image, look incompetent. I found the proof by accident. A shared Google Drive folder with a simple name. Mentorship notes. Inside were chat transcripts, messages between Derek and Lindsay, time-stamped after hours. One message made my blood run cold. "Lindsay, don't worry, she's too by the book to fight back. Just keep her busy cleaning up your reports, and let her drown in the details." Once legal clears Greenwell, I'll push your director title through. Derek, you think she suspects? Lindsay, doesn't matter. Nobody listens to women who complain about men being too confident. She'll quit on her own. They'd planned it. Every step of it. They wanted me gone, and I almost gave them what they wanted. I sat at my desk for a long time after reading that, staring at my monitor until my eyes burned. Then I started saving everything. Every file. Every message. Every timestamp. I uploaded it all to an encrypted drive. That night, I stayed late under the pretense of finishing reports. Derek was still there too, talking to Lindsay on speakerphone with the door cracked open. I didn't move, I just listened. Lindsay's voice was low, firm. Legal's on you, Derek. If they dig too deep, they'll find the original trail from my drive. You need to make sure the blame sticks to her. He laughed, actually laughed. Already working on it. I've got emails saved where it looks like she sent the data. I just need to make a version with her signature on the approval form. He was forging my approval. That's when I stopped feeling angry. I started feeling calm, because he had just given me exactly what I needed, undeniable evidence of collusion, fraud, and document falsification. They wanted to destroy me to cover their tracks, but I had everything, and I knew exactly how to use it. Still, I didn't strike right away. I wanted Derek to keep thinking he was ahead. I wanted Lindsay to feel safe, because what I had planned wasn't just about revenge. It was about exposure. And the day it all came crashing down, neither of them would see it coming. The night I found those messages between Derek and Lindsay, something in me snapped, but not in the way you'd expect. I didn't cry, didn't rage, didn't even feel fear. I just went quiet inside, cold, focused, because now I had what they didn't, time. Derek was panicking over the NDA breach, and Lindsay was busy trying to plug the holes in their story. They had no idea I was sitting on a digital bomb big enough to take down both of them. The next morning, I came into work early, earlier than everyone else. I opened my laptop, checked my encrypted folder again, the messages, the file history, the fake approval document Derek was crafting. All there, duplicated, backed up to 3 separate cloud drives and 1 flash drive hidden in my car. Then I started the slow part, the performance. For the next week, I played dumb. Smiled when Derek barked orders, nodded when he told me to trust his leadership, pretended to be grateful for mentorship. I even apologized for the confusion around the Greenwell files. He lapped it up like a dog. By Wednesday, he was back to his smug self, bragging about how legal wasn't gonna find anything, and how some people in the company should probably learn not to overreact. Perfect, because I'd already made my move. Step 1 was documentation. I spent my lunches and late evenings gathering digital trails, Slack messages, email headers, timestamps that linked his account to the falsified approval form. Then I cross-referenced them with company policy violations. Step 2 was insurance. I reached out quietly to a friend from another department, someone I trusted completely, an IT analyst named Caleb. We'd worked together on data audits before. I told him I suspected a compliance breach, and asked if he could confirm whether any outgoing files from Derek's workstation had been sent to Lindsay's personal email. He hesitated, then said, "If what you're saying is true, that's serious, like legal counsel serious." "It is," I told him, "and I have proof." By the end of the day, he sent me a short message. "You were right, multiple transfers. Time-stamped between 10:43 p.m. and 12:10 a.m. Last one labeled Greenwell Final V3. Sent to lindsay.door@gmail. That was the nail in the coffin. Step 3 was timing. I waited until the next all-staff Friday meeting, the one where department heads gave updates in front of senior management. Derek always made sure to shine in those meetings, tossing in fake stats and buzzwords to make himself look indispensable. This time, though, I had something different planned. That morning, I walked into the office calm, steady, and unnoticeable. Derek greeted me with his usual smirk. "You ready for today, champ? Try not to look nervous when I mention the Greenwell recovery plan." I just smiled and said, "Wouldn't miss it for the world." Right before the meeting started, I forwarded an anonymous email to 3 recipients: the director of legal, HR's head investigator, and the company's compliance officer. The subject line read, "For internal investigation, evidence of data fraud, document forgery, and NDA breach cover-up inside." I attached everything: screenshots, chat logs, the falsified approval form, Caleb's timestamp report, and a recorded audio clip from the night Derek bragged about framing me. Then I sat back, closed my laptop, and walked into that meeting. Lindsay was there, sitting beside the VP of sales like she owned the place. Derek was across the table, flashing his fake confidence, laughing too loud, over-explaining every win like he'd single-handedly saved the company. Halfway through his presentation, the door opened. Pamela from legal stepped in. HR followed. Behind them was the compliance officer, expression unreadable. "Derek Miles," Pamela said sharply, "we need to speak with you immediately." The room went dead silent. Derek blinked, tried to smile. Can this wait until after?" "No," she cut him off. "Now." He glanced at Lindsay. She looked pale. Then she started packing her laptop slowly, eyes darting toward the door. "Miss Dorr," HR said next, "you'll need to come too." The air in that room went cold. They both stood up. Derek muttered something about misunderstandings and procedural errors, but his voice cracked halfway through. As they walked out, he turned and looked at me, suspicion flickering behind his eyes. He knew, not for sure but enough to feel it. I didn't move, didn't smile, just met his stare until the door closed behind him. For the first time in months, the office was completely quiet. And as people started whispering, I sat there thinking, it wasn't over yet. Because this wasn't the end of the story, this was just the fallout. And what came next was the second twist. They disappeared for 2 days. No one saw Derek or Lindsay anywhere in the building. Their offices were dark, their phones went straight to voicemail, and HR wasn't saying a word. Everyone was whispering, but no one knew what was actually going on. I kept my head down, acting oblivious, but inside I was wired, waiting. I thought I'd seen the worst of it. I thought their downfall would be simple. Legal exposure, some disciplinary hearing, maybe termination. I was wrong. What came out next made everything before it look small. On the third morning, HR sent an all-staff email. Due to ongoing investigations regarding data security and compliance issues, certain employees have been placed on administrative leave. No names, but we all knew. That afternoon, my friend Caleb from IT messaged me. "You might want to come by my office. There's something you should see." When I got there, he closed the door, lowered his voice, and said, "This goes way beyond client data." He pulled up a report on his monitor, server logs, internal system access timestamps, and external IP traces. My stomach dropped as I read through them. Over the past year, Lindsay and Derek hadn't just been leaking selective client info, they'd been selling it. To competitors. Fairview Tech's biggest rivals had been quietly receiving consultation reports that mirrored our internal analytics. Those same reports matched Derek's presentations word for word. He and Lindsay had been running a side consulting operation, disguising it as training material, and pocketing the money through a shell LLC registered in Lindsay's cousin's name. It was theft, industrial espionage. But that wasn't the only thing. Caleb scrolled down further. There were email exchanges between Lindsay and Derek using private addresses, messages with attachments named after fake project codes. But one of the attachments caught my eye. Personal insurance SIP. Caleb opened it carefully on a sandboxed machine. Inside were PDF copies of my work, my proposals, my call notes, my pitches, all labeled proprietary research by Derek Miles. He had been stockpiling my work as his own intellectual property. If they got caught, their plan was to shift the blame to me, claiming I was his junior associate who'd provided drafts without knowing their purpose. They weren't just setting me up for one mistake. They were laying groundwork to destroy my entire career if things ever went south. That's when Caleb said something that made my blood go cold. HR didn't find this yet. They're just looking at the Greenwell leak. They think it's one NDA issue, but if you tell legal about this now, they'll launch a criminal investigation. I just stood there, staring at the screen. Derek had used me not just for my work, but as a fall guy, a shield. Every late-night report I'd fixed for him, every email I'd reworded, every deck I'd built, it had been feeding into this. He was smart, I'll give him that. Meticulous, he'd built redundancy into his fraud. If one scheme failed, the other would cover it. And if both got exposed, he'd drag me down with him. Except this time, I wasn't scared. Because I realized something, I could use this too. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to make them turn on each other. All it would take was one small push. That night, I drafted 2 anonymous emails. One was addressed to Lindsay Dorr, the other to Derek Miles. To Derek, I wrote, "Lindsay's cutting a deal with legal. She's giving them everything and framing you as the instigator. Check your email logs. She already sent them the transfer trail." To Lindsay, I wrote, "Derek's already talking. He told them you were the one who gave him internal access. They have the chat logs." Both emails were timed to send at 7:30 a.m. the next day, right before they were scheduled for separate HR interviews. I didn't need to see the aftermath to know what would happen. When two liars are cornered, they don't confess. They devour each other. And that's exactly what they did. By noon, word spread that both of them had cracked under questioning, each trying to pin everything on the other. HR confirmed they'd confessed to serious violations of company policy and ethics. Legal got involved. It seized their devices. The FBI's cybercrimes division was called in. It wasn't an internal scandal anymore. It was federal. They were both escorted out of the building within an hour, separate exits, separate cars. No smiles this time. No smug grins, just silence. But even as I watched them go, I knew there was still one piece left, the reason. The part that kept me awake at night. Because people don't go to these lengths, risking everything, unless there's something deeper driving them. And I was about to find out what that was. When the investigation officially closed, I thought that was it. Case over. 2 corrupt employees exposed. But HR called me back in one last time, for closure, they said. I sat across from the legal director, Pamela, and the compliance officer. The blinds were half closed, and there was this heavy silence in the room that told me what I was about to hear wasn't part of any formal report. Pamela folded her hands and said quietly, "Before we finalize everything, you should know what we found in Derek's company laptop. It involved you." My stomach dropped. "Involved me how?" She hesitated. "We discovered an entire hidden folder, encrypted under your employee ID number. It contained hundreds of screenshots, recordings, and personal data. Photos of your work, your social media, even your old resume versions." I didn't speak. I couldn't. Pamela went on, voice steady but cautious. "It appears Derek had been tracking your career since before he transferred to this branch. He applied for the same position you were being considered for 2 years ago, but you got the offer first. He came in through a referral from Lindsay instead." That's when it clicked. The transfer story wasn't true. Derek had targeted my department deliberately, me deliberately. The file logs told the rest. He'd been monitoring my LinkedIn updates, reading my old marketing blogs, even downloading my conference presentation decks. The timestamp showed he'd started long before we'd ever spoken face to face. Pamela said, "There's more. He wasn't just trying to copy you. He wanted to erase you." I remember those exact words because they didn't make sense at first. Then she explained. He'd built a narrative, an entire fabricated professional history that mirrored mine. Same early employers, same skill sets, even the same quotes I'd used in internal presentations. He'd used that fake resume to get his previous job at another Fairview branch. It wasn't random competition. It was identity theft. But it got worse. When Derek and Lindsay began their consulting side business, he used my name in early drafts of their contracts. In some of the fake documents, I was listed as junior analyst or strategic consultant. They'd removed it later, but the first versions still existed on his hard drive. Pamela leaned forward. "You weren't just his colleague. You were his cover story. Everything he built here, his promotion, his network, even his reputation, was stitched together out of your work and your credibility." I sat there frozen, hearing my own voice from some distant place in memory, the way he used to say, "You worry too much. Just follow my lead." He hadn't meant it as sarcasm. He'd meant it literally. He'd built his entire career by following me. Pamela said softly, "He told investigators that you inspired him, that he admired your professionalism and wanted to learn from you." Then she looked down at her notes, hesitated, and added, "But the messages he wrote privately were not admiration." They'd found long, obsessive rants about me in private Slack DMs to Lindsay. Things like, "She doesn't even realize how much I've done for her career. She'd be nothing if I hadn't shown her how to sell herself. I'm the male version of her, better, smarter. I deserve what she gets." Lindsay had played into it, feeding his ego, weaponizing that obsession to manipulate him. She knew exactly how to control him, flatter him, validate his delusion, push him to do her dirty work. They weren't partners. She was using him, and he was too wrapped up in his own fixation on me to see it. Pamela closed her folder and said quietly, "We're not including the personal material in the report. It's not relevant to the compliance case, but we thought you had a right to know." I thanked her, though my voice shook. Walking out of that room, I felt sick. Not just from what I'd heard, but from realizing how deep it all went. Derek hadn't been trying to beat me at work, he'd been trying to be me. And when that failed, he decided to destroy me instead. That was his motive, not ambition, not greed, erasure. He wanted my life without my presence. And Lindsay. She'd simply found a man foolish enough to destroy himself for her gain. By the time the FBI took over the case, they'd both lawyered up. The company scrubbed their names from all internal documents. But I wasn't done, not yet. Because there was still one more thing left to do. One last move that would make sure neither of them ever used my name, my work, or my silence again. And this time, I wouldn't be behind a desk. After that final meeting with legal, I didn't go home right away. I sat in my car in the underground parking lot with my phone in my lap, staring at the screen. I could still hear Pamela's voice in my head. "He wanted to erase you." It hit me how close he'd come. If I hadn't found that drive, if I hadn't recorded that call, I would have been the one walked out of the building. HR would have believed him, charming, easygoing Derek, and I'd have been the emotional, unstable woman who leaked confidential data. I couldn't just let them fade away quietly. Not after all that. Not after what they did. So I made a choice. I wasn't going to wait for karma. I was going to build it. The company wanted the scandal buried fast. They gave me a generous severance package, a glowing recommendation letter, and an NDA that basically said, "Don't talk, don't sue, don't post." I signed it, but I read every line first. It didn't say anything about speaking to clients. And that's where I started. Remember Greenwell Logistics, the client Derek had dragged into the NDA breach? Their CEO, Mark, was the one who'd pulled me aside that night at dinner and asked if I was okay. I still had his number. I called him. When he picked up, I told him everything. Carefully, fact by fact. The data leaks, the fake reports, the shell company. I even emailed him proof, the parts that didn't violate my NDA but were enough to show the truth. He went quiet for a long time, then said, "They told us it was an internal systems glitch. Jesus Christ." 2 days later, Fairview lost Greenwell as a client, then Hydrobyte, then Coropath. Within a month, 3 of the company's top accounts walked. Each cited trust issues. The board panicked. They tried to clean house, reshuffling leadership, offering hush money to anyone remotely tied to Derek and Lindsay. I didn't take a dime. I didn't need it, because my second move was already in motion. Remember Caleb, the IT analyst? He'd quietly backed up a full audit report before the FBI seized the evidence. Through him, I sent an anonymous tip to ProTech Insider, a major business media outlet that covers corporate fraud and ethics scandals. The story hit the front page a month later. Inside Fairview Tech's double dealing. How 2 executives built a black market data pipeline. The article didn't name me. It didn't have to. But it did include Derek's fake consulting LLC, Lindsay's mentorship payments, and direct quotes from internal chat logs. It even mentioned the forged approval form that an internal staff member refused to alter despite pressure. That phrase alone told everyone in the industry who really blew the whistle. Within 48 hours, Derek's name was trending on LinkedIn for all the wrong reasons. Recruiters blacklisted him. His professional certification board suspended his license. Lindsay lost her executive credentials and was banned from working with any Fairview partner company for 10 years. And then came the lawsuits. Greenwell and Hydrobyte both filed civil suits against Fairview and named Derek and Lindsay personally. Fairview didn't defend them. They were on their own. Derek tried to reach out to me once after that. He sent a long, pathetic email full of half-apologies and self-pity, saying he'd been manipulated, that Lindsay took advantage of his trust, and that he always respected me. I read it once, then deleted it. I didn't need his confession. I already had the truth. 6 months later, I started at a new company in Chicago, different industry, different people. My first week, my new boss said something that stopped me cold. "Word around the circuit is you're the one who took down Fairview's golden boy." That took guts. I didn't deny it, just smiled and said, "Guess I finally learned how to play the game." But the best part came quietly one night after work when I was cleaning out old files. Buried deep in my inbox was a message from Caleb. It just said, "You'll appreciate this." He'd attached a link. It was Derek's LinkedIn page. The headline read, "Freelance Sales Consultant, Seeking New Opportunities." No comments. No endorsements. Nothing, just silence. I closed the tab, shut my laptop, and for the first time in over a year I felt still. Not triumphant, not bitter, just done. Because revenge wasn't about destroying him anymore. It was about making sure he could never erase me again. And he never did. Final line. Turns out Derek was right about one thing: if you smile and learn to play the game, you win. He just never realized I was better at it than he was.